This is chapter number 8, Novels, Society and History. So we will talk about novels, society and history. So this was the time when the publication or the publishing industry was booming, and novels, because if you talk about literature, there was a lot of literature like magazines, like newspaper, etc. But novels, they found its place into everyone's heart, everyone's mind. So we'll specifically talk about these novels here. These are some pictures. So what we will do that, as we know that print culture, it transformed the way people think. And now the literature, it was coming in different forms. And the novel, as I just mentioned, this was a very important tool. It became to for the people to link themselves to a different world, to understand things, and to start debating, to start understanding and discussing. So what we will do here is we'll first see the Europe and the Western world, and then we will come to India, that how this novel actually came into being, and then how it spread. So the rise of novel, first is the novel emerged as new literary genre in many parts of the world, because there were various literary genre, but this was something which was important to mention. The novel first took firm root in these two places, England and France, and then the shopkeepers, clerk, that is the lower middle class people also. And previously the aristocratic, like the gentlemen people, these classes in England and France, they were reading it. But now the lower middle class, they were also forming the readership for these novels. They were also reading it. And there was increment in the earning of the authors. Previously they were only dependent on the patronage of aristocrats, that is, they would write for aristocrat on the big people, and they are going to pay them. But now earnings, because of the spread to different class of the novel, to different class, now the earnings of these authors increased, and they started experimenting different styles. Novel has no specific order. It's like a story, and it can be of any field. It can be, so it has some flexibility, you can say. So now novel provided the authors or the people who are writing the flexible form of writing. Then we'll talk about the publishing market. In this publishing market, people had easier access to books because the market was getting stretched, or you can say it was spreading. And because of the technological improvements, first we talked about the wood blocks, then Johann Gutenberg, he created a very famous kind of printing stuff. Then it came on electricity, and then the cylindrical form. So we all heard and learned about all these things. So there were technological improvements, and that also increased the sales. And people were also marketing, those people who were making it, they were also marketing it to sell it to all the masses, common masses. And novels were both personally and publicly, they can be read, right? Because they were so absorbing, people could absorb the novels and they start believing in it. So these are the key points of what we are going to see just now. So the rise of novel, as we just said, that novel is quite a modern form of literature at this time. And the main reason was the inventions, different mechanical inventions. We have seen that previously the manuscripts were written, that is, people would write by their hand, and those manuscripts means manual scripts. Manual means a person is going to write something. So manual scripts were actually a person is writing. Now when this novel came, and it was really widely accepted and read, it became a hit, you can say. It was so popular at that time. And because these cities were quite the villages also were quite connected because of the different you can say connecting media and communications also. So now novels can also spread, so they scattered, and they had different type of readers now. And the novel the main thing was, novel contains some fictitious character, and these fictitious character will tell you about the love, marriage, and how the relationship between men and women are there. So people were liking this. It was very close to what they are, what a general man is, general family is. The novel first took firm root, that is, it started, or it actually were accepted in England and France. Then only by this 18th century it became popular. So it was already there in 17th century. Why it became popular? Because the people who were aristocrat or traditionally aristocrat or people of big class of England and France, they were reading it. But now the lower middle class, like the people who are not very into reading, like shopkeepers and clerks, they also started reading this novel. So this readership actually grew many-fold, and because of this increase in the readership, now the authors, they can earn more. Previously they were just dependent on these aristocrat and gentlemanly people, that big people having money, so they were just writing for them. But now as they were getting money, means because of the wider readership, they were trying different styles, they were writing different things. So Henry Fielding, he was a novelist in early 18th century. So he said one time that the founder of a new province of writing, what he wanted to say, he could make his own laws. That is, when he is writing a novel, he is writing some fictional story. Now he is the master. He can, defy law, he can make law. This is what he wanted to say. Then Walter Scott, there was he actually took all these Scottish ballads and all these historical things, and he compiled it. All this Scottish thing going on, he compiled it. So this is how he made a novel out of that. Then a very important word, which is important as far as examination is concerned, is epistolary novel. Now what was this epistolary novel? This novel is basically based on the letters, right? Like if this novel was like this, so a letter will be there, first letter will be there, say two people are talking. So this guy will this person will, or say a woman, if the story is about women, because I'll just tell you about a story also, that Samuel Richardson, Pamela. So he wrote in 18th century, and this was just an exchange of letters between two lovers. So what is in the heroine's mind, means the female protagonist, what is in her mind, that can be heard, listened, and believed by the readers. So this let me show you what I was just about to tell you, that there are two people. Here is a female, male. Now the female is writing letter to a male. So you read this content. Then a male is writing back to the female. Then there is a letter. So this kind of novel where the letters are exchanged, and in this letter the story is being pinned, or the story has been written. This is called, very important word is there, epistolary novel. Epistolary. I'll just go to this word again, because this is quite important and it is always asked. First, let me go to the gentlemanly classes, because we discussed here, and this means those people who are who claim the noble birth, and they have very high position in the society, and they think that they are supposed to set the standard of what should be the behavior of the society. Then this epistolary, this is written in the form of series of letter, right? So form of letter means from one person to another, and this is how the novel is being made. Then we come to the publishing market. Publishing market, Previously, poor people cannot buy it. Why? Because it was quite expensive, these novels and etc. things which are coming to the market. So Henry Fielding Tom Jones in 1749, so he actually issued 6 volumes of his book, and each volume is of 3 shillings. That is around 18 shilling for his whole world. Now this 3 shilling was a 1 week earning for the poor or the laborer. So how can he buy this novel? He cannot buy this. But then what happened? There were libraries, circulating libraries in 1740s. So what this library was doing, it was giving the book for rent. So now everyone, those people who are not able to buy this kind of books which are quite expensive for them, they started taking the book for rent. That is, hiring the novels for hour. And now everyone could afford it, and when they could afford it, they were just reading it. And the word of the novel, the word it create novel, why it became so popular is that when someone reads the novel, he actually starts believing that he is in this novel world. He is inside the novel world, and he is one of the character. So he goes into a different world. Are you able to understand that? While reading, he is not himself. He is the male protagonist, or he is a hero, or he relates someone in the novel. So he can read it in the you can say solitariness, or you can also read the novel with friends or relatives or anywhere. And if you see any European person today also, he is or she will have a book in his hand, a novel in his hand. This is you can say it's a tradition now. So various people wrote about various things, and the love for this novel, because there were people also who were not uh, literate, so rural people. So what they did is, the novel are being read aloud for them. Means one person will read it and the other person will hear. So there is a famous story that a group at Slough, it's a place, when they heard, while someone was reading that novel, that the Pamela, the heroine of that Richardson popular novel, had got married in this Slough, in this village, and they were so happy. They just went to the church and started ringing bells, parish church. So this was happening at that time. Now I'll just give you an idea of a word called serialized. Serialized, this is a format in which the story is published in installment, each part in an issue of a journal. So what does this mean is, I'll just tell you first, then we'll go to the detail. So we have say this much of story is there. So one part of the story at the say first week, then second part of the story in the second week, like this. So there is a serial. These are linked. So wherever it ends, or it is having some interval, it's so tempting for the readers. They would love to understand, and they would love to wait for the second one. Then again there is some secrecy or something tempting. They will wait for the third one and they start discussing. This is called the serialized, like the television soaps you see today. It's like that one. So this is called a serialized uh, paper. So Charles Dickens, now you will hear this word, this name again and again, Charles Dickens, because he has made his name. So in 1836, Charles Dickens, Pickwick, this is the example. This is a picture of the Charles Dickens Great Expectation. So he serialized in magazine. So this was so magazine were quite attractive. People were reading it, and there was a suspense. Here we have a suspense. So when we have suspense or rahasya or something tempting, people will always wait for the second installment to come. So this was happening at that time. So this word you have to really understand, serialized. As I just said that the advertisement of the libraries was going on. So this is the one of the libraries advertisement, and this is a picture of sketches by Boz, and this is again by Charles Dickens. So this is Charles Dickens' first publication. This was a collection of journalist essay, so journalistic essays. It was a collection of that entitled Sketches by Boz. That is why I said Charles Dickens you will hear a lot. And one more person you will hear a lot is Leo Tolstoy. He is Leo Tolstoy. He was a very famous Russian novelist, and he wrote about rural life and community. So let us talk about the world of novel. So what I was telling again and again, that this was not only for the aristocrats or big people. The novels were for everyone. So novel doesn't only talk about the states and empire, but the novel talks about common people also. Common people also. So there was a problem, you can say, when the industrialization started. Everything was good. That factories came up, people were making profit, business profits were there. Economy also was growing. But at the same time, some people they faced problem. That is, when cities were expanded, it was unregulated, and the laborers were overworking. They were underpaid. They were unemployed, poor. They were homeless. They were just seeking shelters. So this industrial growth also showed something which was not being shown by everyone or not being understood by everyone. So what these developments, these were very different development, or people were not talking about this. So Charles Dickens, he actually wrote about what are the terrible effects, what are the bad effects, what are the effects which people are not talking about. These are the terrible effects of industrialization. How a normal people, or how a normal labor, what is the life and character. So in his famous novel Hard Times, he described, it was written in 1854. So this you have to remember. Hard Times were written in 1854, and there was a town, a fictional town. He you say invented, or he coined, Coke Town, and this Coke Town he expressed like it was full of machinery, all smoke, rivers were polluted, and all things what were the after effects of the industrialization. And he also mentioned that the workers are only known by hands. They are hands. They are not talking about. They are just instruments. They are not people. So this what was Charles Dickens' idea about industrialization at that time. And Charles Dickens didn't stop here. There was a very famous novel of his, is Oliver Twist. Now here we see this Oliver, and Oliver, he's a child here, and he's working in a workhouse, and he's asking for something, food, and everyone was watching that whether he's going to get food or he's going to be rebuked, or this person is going to do something to him. So this was Oliver Twist, where the story was, and this he wrote in 1838. So once again you have to remember that Oliver Twist, written by Charles Dickens in 1838. So there was a poor orphan person, and or a kid, and he lived with petty criminals, beggars. That means not with good people. But there was a good ending. Finally he was adopted by a wealthy man. But all the novels, they didn't find the happy end. There was Emile Zola's. He is Emile Zola. This is a picture of Emile Zola. So Emile Zola, Germinal, in 1885. So he wrote a novel about a miner, means the person who mines in a mine, means take out things from the mines deep down. So it is based on France, and finally this guy, the end is not very good. Everyone turns against him, and the hopes of this guy, the hero of this novel, hopes are shattered. So what is about the community and society? When we talk about community and society, that as we said, that the majority of readers of the novel, they were living in the city. But when they were reading about a novel, and when the novel is about rural communities, they find a connection between them. A person sitting in city, he is connected to rural areas. So one of this kind is Thomas Hardy. He was a British novelist, 19th century. So he wrote about the traditional rural communities of England. So community and society, the novel created a feeling of connection with the fate of the, or what happened to the rural communities. It used vernacular languages. Vernacular languages mean the local languages that are spoken by common people, and created a sense of shared world between different diverse people in a nation. So actually it was vanishing. The rural people were not very much in the city. So he wrote about that. Why? And he also showed that because at that time we learned that common area were being taken over by the big farmers and the employed laborers, right? So this is how Hardy, in Mayor of Cambridge, he gave that sense, and it was written in 1886 about the rural community. So he wrote about a Michael Hencard. The hero of the novel was Michael Hencard. He was quite a successful grain merchant, and he becomes the mayor of a farming town, which is Casterbridge. But he was not. He was generous to someone. He was cruel to someone. So he lost to his rival Donald Farfair. So this Farfair, he was smooth and even tempered. That he talked to everyone in a same way, not unlike this guy, the other one, who was quite generous sometimes, or cruel sometimes. So these are the things, the problems and everything which Thomas Hardy tried to present in the Mayor of Casterbridge of 1886. Now again, the novels were vernacular. Vernacular means they were in the local language. So these local languages, that is why people started reading it. And like the nation, the novel brings together various cultures, because the language was quite vernacular. Then we talk about the new women. So what happened here? The new women got more leisure to read as well as write novels now. So they were reading also and they were writing also. So they drew upon their experiences. So now they were sharing their experiences. They wrote about family life, and this actually earned public recognition. People were reading it, and they were, you can say, appreciating it also. And many novels like that of the Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. This was a very famous novel. It gives a glimpse of world of women in rural society. That is, the rich women in the rural society in early 19th century Britain. I'll just show you about that. And the novelist who came into this writing, they not only popularized the domestic role of women, they also showed some women who are rebel, who will not abide by everything what is being said. They will ask questions. So writer of this sort was Charlotte Bronte. Jane Eyre, she used to write with this name, and she was a rebel woman. So we have already talked about vernacular, that is the normal spoken form of language rather than a formal language, a literary form. It is not that literary form. It is just the way I am speaking to you right now. Now the new women, as we just said, that the middle classes, they became more popular, and this novel involved women also. Now women has now time to read, so they were writing also, and they were showing everything: emotions, identities, experiences and problems, everything which is related to women. So most of the women, they would talk about, or they would write about the domestic life, but they were also talking about something else also, their experiences, how about their family life, about because this was earning public recognition, people were reading it. So I'll just show you a picture here, that this is a picture of a woman reading, and this is what a cartoon being made, that the women, when they started reading and then writing, then what will happen to the family? See, the kids are just crying, and the husband is saying, what are you doing? You're writing. So this will happen to the family. This was just a cartoon. So we'll talk about the women novelists, what they did. So the novel of Jane Austen, it gave a glimpse of the idea about the women. See, the world of women in genteel rural society. So these were uh, rural society, but the women which are of somewhat, you can say, high class or good earning in the early 19th century. So what happened here is that everyone would encourage the women that they would do something to find wealthy husbands. So what she wrote in the famous book Pride and Prejudice, if you see the first sentence of her book, it is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in a possession of a good fortune must be in a want of a wife. So every man who is having good money, he requires a wife. So every woman has to try for it, right? So this is Jane Austen picture. But they were women. They would just not do the normal thing. If something is there, they will rebel. If they don't like something, they will rebel. So one of them is Charlotte Bronte. Jane Eyre she is called. So when this Jane Eyre was published in 1874, young Jane, because Jane is the name of the protagonist, female protagonist, and it was shown that this Jane is quite independent and assertive. So she was against her aunt, and she was saying that you are different for others. That is, her aunt is different for others, and she's different for her. So she said, "I'm not going to tell you aunt in this life." So this is how the rebellious character was also shown. I'll just show you a picture of a marriage contract because we talked about marriage here. This is a marriage contract. Here they see the women are just sitting, but the men are doing the all the work. So this is the picture of Charlotte Bronte, and she wrote about the rebel thing. So as I said, the female protagonist, she was saying that she's never going to call uh, the aunt as her aunt in this life. Then what happened to the novels of the young? See, novel means young people we are talking about. So novels for young boys idealized a new man, someone who was quite powerful, assertive, independent, daring. So this is how young boys were being fed. So these novels aroused the excitement and adventure of conquering some lands which are strange to them, and love stories which was written specifically for the growing women, adolescent women or girl, it also became very popular in this period. So let us see first them. Romana in 1884, it was written by Helen Hunt Jackson, and there was What Katie Did in 1872, it was written by Sarah Chauncey Woolsey. So if I'm not pronouncing the name, doesn't matter, because if you give your name, that is the Indian name, to foreigners, they will also not be able to speak. So it doesn't matter. So these are the names you have to remember. And along with this, R.L. Stevenson Treasure Island and Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. This also became very great hit. So let me take you to the details now. Novels of the young. So novels for young boys, that is, the novels were showing a person who is very powerful, because the young men would like it. That is, the hero will go for adventure, and he will just do conquer that land. So we have this R.L. Stevenson's Treasure Land, as I just mentioned, and Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. This is specifically for the younger kids, younger generation. And then we have G.A. Henty's. It was a historical adventure, and this was specifically for the Englishmen. That is, they showed how these strange lands were conquered, Mexico, Alexandria, Siberia. So this is for encourage the young boys of England, to show them how the courageous peoples are. Then also the love stories, as I just said, for the growing girls, like Romana 1884 by Helen Hunt Jackson, and series which was called as What Katie Did in 1872 by Sarah Chauncey Woolsey. And this was wrote under the pen name, because when a writer writes, He may have a different name. He may write with a different name. So that is called pen name. Susan Coolidge, I guess. So colonialism and after, what happened here is, see, colonialism and after means the early novel contributed to colonialism by making the readers feel that they were part of superior community of fellow colonialists. That is, the colonial people, they are going to colonize these people. So it was thought that this European area and say India or say these Africa, they were doing the good job of going there and making the colonies. So it was actually a kind of a good thing for them in the novels. So the view of colonized people were like this. If these people like Indians, Africans, and etc., they were thought or they were showed like they are just primitive. They are barbaric people, and we need to do something that is the hero or the novel people have to do, go and civilize these people. And this was only being understood by everyone after Robinson Crusoe. Means it was an adventurer, and people were just learning it, reading it, and they were happy. But still, I'll just show you what Robinson Crusoe had. But only after this Joseph Conrad, it was later in 20th century, he showed that why this colonialism was so bad, and he criticized the colonialism, and he showed the backside or dark side of the colonialism. So as I was just saying, that the novel, when it came into being or it was being popular or getting popular, the Europeans were colonizing the world at that time. So the earlier novel which came, they showed that the Europeans are a superior community and they are making the colonies. So the hero of Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, this is a very, very important and famous book, novel, Robinson Crusoe. So this hero was an adventurer, but he was a slave trader also. He was a slave trader also. So he would not want to talk to these inferior creatures. He will just say them by certain names like Friday. Any name he would take. So this colonialism was actually made very natural or default to the public who is reading. Because the colonial people was shown as they were not good, means they were just primitive, barbaric, they were not even human. And it is the duty of the colonial rule or the Europeans to make them civilized, to make them fully human. But this all happened, people were happy at that time. But actually, Joseph Conrad, he wrote in his novel the dark side of the colonial occupation, that how these colonies made these people more inhuman or more not fully human. Novel come to India. So when novel comes to India, some of the earliest Indian novels were written in Bengali and Marathi. Please understand, not in Hindi, not in Urdu, but in Bengali and Marathi. In 1857, Baba Padmaji wrote Yamuna Prayatnam. In 1861, Lakshman Moreshwar Halbe's Muktamala was published. Indian novelist wrote for developing a modern literature for the country that could produce a sense of national belonging or nationalism. Translations, they also helped spread the popularity and growth of the novel. When we talk about a novel in South India, there are two key discussions we'll have. First of all, in 1889, Chandu Menon's novel, it was named as Indulekha. It was published, and this was the first modern novel in Malayalam. So in Malayalam, the first modern novel is Chandu Menon's Indulekha. Then in 1878, in Andhra Pradesh, Kandukuri Veerashalingam, he wrote a Telugu novel called Rajashekara Karitamu. So we'll just go into the detail of this. First of all, that when the novel came to India, prior to that, in 7th century, if you remember, 7th century, already Banabhatta, he already has written in Sanskrit Kadambari. And there are also Panchatantra. We know about this Panchatantra. And then there are also some stories of prose, or you can say content in Persian and Urdu that were called as Dastan. So it was not new. But these content which we just talked about were quite different from the novels. And this novel only were actually Indians became familiar with these novels when they were coming from Western side. All these were novels, not novels. But when the Western novel came to India, then the Indians became familiar to it. And then the print media developed, the languages, that is the vernacular languages, that this enhanced or this increased the propagation or the readership of novel. So some of the earliest novels were written in Bengali and Marathi. Again, you have to understand that it was not in any other language, but Bengali and Marathi. So the earliest novel in Marathi was Baba Padamji's or Padmanji's Yamuna Prayatnam. And it was just a simple story about the widows of that era. And there was another novel, Muktamala, by Lakshman Moreshwar Halbe. And it was a kind of, you can say, romance narrative. And it has some moral purpose. So it was not very realistic novel as against to the Padmanji's novel, which was about the situation of widows at that time. So what we understand is that leading novelist, whatever name we are taking or we will be discussing, they wrote for a cause. They just don't wrote for anything else, for fun or any fantasy kind of thing. We'll talk about that also. But most of the leading novelists, they talk in the novel for a cause. So there were translation going on. That is how this stimulated the growth of novel in new areas. So let us talk about novel in South India. He is Chandu Menon. So what he attempted, that he bought or he read a novel which was from Western. So he bought a novel, or he got a novel called Henrietta Temple. So this novel by Benjamin Disraeli, he word by word translated into Malayalam. Right? Chandu Menon did this. Oh, Chandu Menon. But what he realized is that word by word or complete translation of this kind of novel, the people are not going to relate with it. That is the flow, the way of speaking, and the ideas or the emotions that are being shown in this novel. The people in Malabar region, they can't connect with it. So what he did, he, on the manner of English novel, he now came with another novel which was quite delightful, and this was called as Indulekha. So it was published in 1889, and this is worth noting. You have to, this is very important for the exam, that Indulekha was the first modern novel in Malayalam. Now let us go to the Andhra Pradesh. So what happened in Andhra Pradesh? The same situation. Andhra Pradesh also has the same situation. Here it was Kandukuri Veerashalingam. So he also started translating Vicar of Wakefield, and it was Oliver Goldsmith's novel. And he just translated into Telugu. But soon he realized, the way Chandu Menon realized, that people are not going to connect with it. So he came up with an original Telugu novel called as Rajashekhara Karitamu in 1878. So here is a image of Pickwick Abroad. So the translation or adaptation was going on in India at that time. So novel in Hindi. The novel in Hindi, Bharatendu Harishchandra, as we just saw, he was a great pioneer of modern Hindi literature. He encouraged many poets and writers that you should recreate and translate novels from other languages. So he said that you must do it in Hindi. So just try to translate from other languages. In 1882, but Srinivas Das, he published his novel called Pariksha Guru, the Master Examiner. And this novel reflects the inner and outer world of the newly emerging middle class under the colonial rule. So the writings of Devaki Nandan Khatri, this also created a novel reading public in Hindi, and his novel called Chandrakanta was very popular. Now comes Premchand. Premchand's a very big name in Hindi literature. His writings brought about excellence in Hindi novels. So he began writing in Urdu, then he shifted to Hindi. In 1916, Premchand novels Seva Sadan, it lifted the this Hindi novel from the fantasy world, moralizing and simple entertainment to something very serious. That is serious reflection of the lives of ordinary and social issues. So there was a shift from all those fantasy world now to actual issues. This Premchand did. So Seva Sadan deals with poor conditions of women, dowry and hegemony of the Indian upper classes. So let us discuss about the novel in Hindi. So as we just, in the short discussion we had, that Bharatendu Harishchandra, he told and he encouraged his fellow poets and writers that you should now translate and recreate the novels from other languages into Hindi. But this was going on, and since Bharatendu Harishchandra was a very big name, but the actual, you can say, the first popular modern novel was written by Srinivas Das of Delhi. So he is accredited with the first modern novel in Hindi. So you have to remember this name, Srinivas Das. So his novel, which was published in 1882, and this was called as Pariksha Guru, the Master Examiner. And this was about a very young man he was from a good family, well-to-do family, but how the bad company can be dangerous to any young man like him, and consequently he may lose morals. So this Pariksha Guru, as I just said, that this Pariksha Guru was talking about the inner and outer world of the newly emerging middle class under the colonial rule. So this is all about being said here in the discussion of what he wrote in this. That is why it was a kind of good you can say novel. But the only thing is that why his name is not so popular, though he was the first novelist in Hindi, or he is accredited to be. But the content here, if you see, that it was about how should they be, because the new technologies were coming, and the young women were very perturbed at that time, that whether they should appreciate the agriculture technology, modern trading practices, or whatever Western sciences are giving to them, or they should think about their traditional values. So it's kind of dilemma he showed. So that was kind of too moralizing. He was giving a lot of gyan, a lot of teachings, and in this novel. So he didn't get so many readers. Pariksha Guru didn't get so many readers. So now came Devaki Nandan Khatri. Devaki Nandan Khatri, he is also very famous novelist. So he had a very bestseller in Hindi, Chandrakanta, and this was he took us to the fantasy world. And now people had something, because there are so many people who wanted some fun, some kind of a life which they were living. They just want to go away with that life for some moment. So after this reading of Chandrakanta, they felt that. Then came Premchand. Now Premchand, he was a very famous novelist, and his name you'll hear again and again. So he started writing in Urdu first, but then he shifted to Hindi, and his art of storytelling was very different. It was quite influential. So many critics, they think that his novel Seva Sadan, that is the Abode of Service, which was published in 1916. So all this fantasy world which was going on, and people were having entertainment. So now the critics were saying that he has shifted this fantasy, moralizing and simple entertainment to something else, that the Premchand has taken it to the social issues and ordinary people. And Seva Sadan was talking about the poor condition of women in society and child marriage, dowry, and all those things pertaining to that particular time, the situation of the community. He was just trying to portray or tell through his novel in a very, very storytelling manner. So that is why he was a success. When we talk about novels in Bengal, see, there were two kinds of Bengali novels that emerged in the 19th century. So one was based on historical issues, the other was based on social problems and romantic relationships between men and women. So the new Bhadralok, it found himself at home in the more private worlds of reading novels. So people were now finding their own world when they were reading novels. So this Bhadralok. Bhadralok means those people with elite class at that time, you can say. Initially, the Bengali novel used a colloquial style that is associated with the urban life. It also used Mayeli. Mayeli, this was the language of women. Generally, the women speak in Mayeli. And this style was replaced by the famous Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's prose, which was quite Sanskrit type, or you can say it has some Sanskrit ties, but also contained some vernacular style, that is the local language. By the 20th century, the power of telling stories in simple language made him Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay, now the Sharat Chattopadhyay, the most popular novelist in Bengal, not in Bengal, but all over the country. So this is how things shaped up. So he is the Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. I'll just talk about him in a short while. So I'll start with this novels in Bengal. So there were two type of novels in Bengal in the 19th century. First was talking about the past, the characters and the events. All were they were showing the historical context and historical events. And there was other novels also, and they were showing the domestic things like the relationship between men and women and social problems. So there was you can say a elite class, and they always promoted the musical things, dance performance, and this Kabir Larai, that is the poetry contest. So they were just trying to emancipate or enhance this kind of culture. But the reading novels, people found, especially the Bhadralok, that is those people who have an interest in they just want to go into some private world through reading of these novels. So novels can be read individually, and they can be read in groups also. But here we have Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. So if you discuss this, that he used to do puja with the family, and then also he in another room, I'll show you the room. See, here's the picture. This is the, you can say, where he used to perform the jatra or the puja or etc. And here is the place. This is the room where he would sit with the other people who were literate or literary friends, you can say. So Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, he would host a jatra in the courtyard while members of the family would be gathered, as I just showed on the right hand side of the picture. But in his room, he has literary friends. He used to discuss and read with them, but he wanted them to justify or give judgment to what he has written. But Bankim read out Durgesh Nandini in 1865. And when he read this out to his literary friends, they were just stunned and shocked, because it was Durgesh Nandini was a novel with excellence. It was quite good. He is Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. But if you see, at that time people were using this Mayeli, the word or the speech of women, they were using it, and they're using some Sanskritized word also. But now came the Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's vernacular style. He used the local languages, means local content also he added. That is why he became so popular. And then came the 20th century, the power of telling stories in simple language. As I just said, this was the simple language started with Banking Chand Chattopadhyay, but here came the Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay. Bankim is different, Sharat is different. So Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay, and because he was writing in vernacular and simple language, he became the most popular novelist of Bengal, and not even Bengal, but rest of India. So this is how things shaped up. Now, novels in colonial rule. So colonial administrator, they found vernacular language, that is the languages in the local language, as a valuable source of information on native life and customs. So this information was useful for them in governing Indian society with its large variety of communities and castes. So books were translated into English, often by either British administrators or Christian missionaries. So Indians use the novel as powerful medium to criticize what they consider defects in the society and to suggest the remedies also. So novels presented a glorified account of the past, which in turn created a sense of national pride, nationalism among the readers. So novels created a sense of collective belonging also on the basis of the language, one's language. Novels made their readers familiar with the ways in which people in other part of their land, they spoke their languages. So we'll just discuss about this. So here, when the novels, we were specifically talking about the colonial time. So when the colonies were there, or you can say the British were ruling us, what was the thing going on with the novel? So we talked about Chandu Menon, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay and Premchand. So when the novel were there and British rule came, or British rule was actually established, now the colonial administrator, whosoever came from England, they wanted to understand India. They wanted to understand Indian society. They wanted to understand their caste, community, their household, how they live, how they talk, what festivals they do, what they worship, their beliefs and practices, everything they wanted to know. Then only they are going to rule it. There is a possibility of ruling, and only when you know the customs and cultures of the society. So they took advantage of all these books, and most time, if they don't know the language, they are translated in English, often by the British administrators and Christian missionaries. So this was how Indian used these novels as a very powerful medium. They need to criticize what all the society has defects and the problems the society has, and also they were suggesting the remedies. So there is an example of Viresha Lingam. He wrote a novel mainly just to propagate the ideas about the society, that what is going on in the society. So there was a kind of, you can say, relationship between the novelist, they were writing in order to enhance the past. That is, they were showing the glorification, glorifying the past, and they wanted the readers to understand that we have a very good past, very great past, and we are no less than the people who are ruling us. So we are almost equal to them, because we have a very good past. So a national sense of belonging, or you can say sense of nationalism, was the main content of the novel at that time. So I'll just try to say one thing, that because the people were reading in a certain language, and this language, if you see your home, your maid speaks the same word in same language, same in a different way. Your friend speaks in a different way. Your colleague speaks in a different way. So now by reading this novel, people come to understand that in their local area only, how different words are spoken by different people. The problem of being modern. So what does that mean? The problem of being modern. Now here there was a dilemma. There was a dilemma generally shown in novel, that the people were in the colonial rule. So they were seeing the colonial rule as things which are good, but they wanted to have their own traditions also. So Chandu Menon, he portrayed Indulekha. Indulekha, a woman, that is, there was a girl and a boy, or a men and women. So the women in his novel Indulekha, he showed her as having, she was immensely beautiful. She was having all the intellectual abilities. She was having artistic talent, and she was also educated in English and Sanskrit. And also the hero of his novel, Chandu Menon's, Madhavan, he also was showed as an English educated Nair from University of Madras, and he was also Sanskrit scholar, and he was dressed in Western clothes, but still he used to keep a small hair, you can say long tuft of hair, according to the Nair custom. So what Chandu Menon wanted to show here there is that in the colonial rule also, people are educated. People should take the good things from whatever is coming from the Western world, but also keep these values and tradition that they have with themselves. Now coming to the pleasure of reading, see, everything was, because novel was kind of entertainment at that, right? So people were very happy with this reading, because this new culture actually not became popular, but it becomes immensely popular. There were different styles of novels like detective, mystery, and they were in high demands. They were in such high demands that some of them, especially the detective novels, they were reprinted 22 times. Reprinted 22 times, right? So this was a kind of silent reading. Now we see when we go in the train or when we take bus, we don't talk to our fellow, you can say, traveler. We don't talk to them. But at that time, in this period, people were just talking, and the 3 people can't sit just idle. They just need to talk. So the idea of reading in solitariness or enjoying the idea of being a reader of the novel were very different for everyone, because actually people were reading and they were just daydreaming at that time. Society and history. Now coming to women and the novel. Indian women and the novel, we are discussing about a novel in India. So women not only read novels, but also they started writing the novels. And novels allowed for a new kind of conception of womanhood. So women in southern India, they began writing novels and also the short stories. So ideas of this liberal environment and reform for women were presented in many works such as Ruqayya Husain's Sultana's Dreams and Padmara. Many women authors such as Hannah Millen and Shalaba Ghosh Jaya, Shalabala, so they also wrote in secrecy. So let us see what they have to offer. First, I'll just go to the detail of this so that you understand the context, because this only knowing the points will not help us to actually understand the chapter and solve the questions. So at this time, when the novels were coming, many people, they got worried that when these readers are reading novel, especially the children and the women, they may get something different from the surrounding, because they are going into an imaginary world. Most of the people who were thinking like this, they actually wrote to newspaper and magazine that you should not you should advise people that just keep away from novels, because they may provide something which is not good for women and children. And also, some parents would do what? They would keep the novel somewhere else, maybe at some height, so that children could not reach. And the young, they used to read it in the secrecy, means when someone is not there. But there was a different kind of paradigm shift. What kind of shift was there? You might have seen in your house, your grandmother, they always utter bedtime stories to you. That is the stories at night, and you will feel so good. Every house in a human, like Indian human nature, it is that the grandma will tell us story. But here something different happened. What happened? Now the grandma will give the novel to the grandchildren, and they will ask grandchildren to narrate, to tell them the novel or to read them the novel. So this is what happened at that time. That is why the novels were so much into everyone's life. But there were some women, they were not just reading the novel or stories. They also started writing it. And because they were writing it, they were giving their own perspective. And there was a new conception or new idea of womanhood. Because they were stories of love, of course, but there were stories of love in which a woman has the power. A woman was shown that women can choose the life partner, or she can also refuse for a life partner. That is how they were shown that the women are controlling their lives. There is no one who is controlling their life. I'll give an example of Ruqayya Hussain. She was a reformer. She was a social reformer. So actually she was widowed, but she still started a girls' school in Calcutta. And she wrote a very satiric. Satiric means you are making fun, but in a very tactful way. You are criticizing someone in a funny way, but very tactful way. You are satiring, or you are a satirist. So she wrote a satiric fantasy called as, in English she wrote, and this was called as Sultana's Dream in 1905. And this shows about the different world, or a undulated, topsy-turvy world of women. And one more novel of her, Ruqayya Hussain, this Padma Rag. Padma Rag, this also showed need for women to reform their condition. And this showed that women are responsible. Women will reform their own actions. And continuing this discussion, various men, they were always suspicious that women are writing novel, women are reading novel. So Hannah Mullins, she was a Christian missionary, and she wrote this Karunao Phul Monir Bibron. Karunao Phul Monir Bibron in 1852. And this was a very reputed novel in Bengali. And she would tell the readers that I am doing this, or I am writing this in secrecy. There was one more, Shaila Bala Ghosh Jaya. She was also a very popular novelist. But unlike other men who were suspicious about women, her husband was very much supportive. So her husband supported Shaila Bala Ghosh Jaya. Then we'll talk about the caste practices, lower caste and minority. So the novel being written. So here novels such as Indira Bai and Indulekha, Chandu Menon wrote it, Indulekha, were written by members of upper caste and were primarily about the upper caste character. In 1892, Pother Konjambu, he was a lower caste writer from Kerala. So he wrote a novel called Saraswati Vijayam, which mounted a very strong attack on the caste operation or caste system, how they are being oppressed. From the 1920s, there was a new kind of novel which emerged, and that depicted the lives of the peasants and the low caste people. So Vaikom Muhammad Bashir, he was one of the early Muslims writer, and he gained, he was quite renowned, wide attention he got. He was a novelist in Malayalam. So Bashir, very short novels and short stories, it spoke about detail from the everyday life of Muslim household, poverty, insanity, and life in prison. So this is how Muhammad Bashir also wrote various things, and specifically about the Muslim fraternity. So now, as we just saw, that Indulekha was a love story. Now this love story, it was quite debated, what he has written. The concern was the upper caste Hindus' marriage. Especially, there were two things, you can say parts. two communities. This Brahmins, Nambudri Brahmins, and the Nayars. So Nambudris were landlords at that time, but the Nayars were just tenants. But in late 19th century, this younger generation of English educated Nayar men who had acquired property and wealth in this region or on his own, he started arguing strongly against this Nambudri alliances with Nayar women. So they don't want this Nambudri Brahmins, because at that time they were landlords and Nayars were tenants, so they were not going well together. So the Nayar women should not marry them. This is what the idea was. So in this story, Indulekha, there was again very interesting debate. There was a Suri Nambudri. He was shown as a foolish landlord. So he came to marry Indulekha. And this was the whole idea of the novel, satire of the novel. The Indulekha, which is the heroine of this novel, he rejects this Nambudri, and he or she chooses whom? Madhavan. Madhavan is an educated, handsome Nayar, and this couple, Indulekha and Madhavan, they moved to Madras, and Madhavan also joined the civil service. Now this Suri Nambudri, he was quite desperate because he couldn't marry Indulekha. So what he did, he found a relative of Indulekha who was quite poor, and he married her, and he thought that he has married Indulekha. So this is Chandu Menon's Indulekha. It was showing the ignorance and immorality of the Suri Nambudri. So he wanted to just show the caste system and different, you can say, part of different caste and creeds at that time. And the novels like Indirabai and Indulekha, it was specifically written on with the background of upper caste, and these were upper caste characters. But not all these novels were this type. Potheri Kunjambu, he was a lower caste writer from North Kerala, and he wrote a novel called Saraswati Vijayam in 1892. And he was writing about the caste oppression. And in his novel, there was a man, the hero was untouchable caste. And because he was facing cruelty from the Brahmin landlord, what he did, he just escaped from the village because of the brutality, and he got converted into Christian, and he got a lot of he went into education, and then he became a judge, and he came again back to the same place. But the villagers were thinking what? That landlords had killed this guy, and they filed a case. But when the trial was going on, the judge, who was the person who has escaped from the brutality of this guy, Nambudri, when the judge reveals his identity, this Nambudri finally repents and he reforms. So this Saraswati Vijayam was showing the importance of the upliftment of the lower caste. And then we have one more example of this. In Bengal, there was a novel which was showing about the peasants or lower castes also. That was Advaita Malla Burman. He wrote Titash Ekti Nadir Naam, and this was an epic. He wrote about Mallas. He wrote everything about Mallas, that how they live their life, how they are related to the water, how they are dying if the water is not there, how the Mallas are fighting in between them, how they are being oppressed. All these he wrote. But the best part is that he wrote about the life of Malla caste, and he himself was from the lower caste, Malla caste only. But the communities, different religions also came into being. So Vaikom Muhammad Bashir, he was one of the early Muslim writers, and he gained a wide renown as a novelist in Malayalam. So he was so poor at that time. He wrote about that. He was so poor, he often sold these books. He just go door to door, and then he used to, as a vendor, he used to give the books to everyone. So he was quite poor at that time. But he wrote about the internal of Muslims' household, and he wrote about the poverty, the insanity, and the life in prison. All these he wrote, and he was quite successful, and people liked his work. The nation and its history. So the nation and its history. New educated minds wanted a new view of the past that would show the Indians could be independent minded and had been so in history. Then in 1857, Bhudev Mukhopadhyay's Anguriya Binimoy, it was published, and it became the first historical novel written in Bengal. So you have to remember this, that Anguriya Binimoy was the first historical novel written in Bengal. These novels produced a sense of pan-India belonging, that is, all over India belonging. They could inspire actual political movements and raised questions about nation and the nationality, Rashtravad. Then in the novel and the nation making, novels included all kinds and classes of people in its narrative so that they could be seen to belong to a shared world. And writers like Premchand, he wrote novels that looks towards the future without forgetting the importance of the past. His work, like the Rangbhumi and Godan in 1936, it depicts a community based on democratic values. And Rabindranath Tagore, he wrote about the condition of women and nationalism in his novel called as Ghare Baire in 1916. So we'll just talk about them in detail now. So there was colonial historians, they wrote that the Indians are weak, they are divided, and they are totally dependent on the British. And this narrative came to these novelists also. So they wrote something so that they could show the people, and they can just make their people understand that no, we are not anywhere less than these colonial people or Britishers. So what they did is they took historical characters, and in Bengal, if I can give you an example, various historical novels about Marathas and Rajputs were written, and this was just not in Bengal, because when you write in Bengal, it has a pan-India belonging, means all over India was reading it, and they were showing the adventure, the heroism, and the romance and sacrifice of the people or the characters which belongs to the ancient India. And Buddhadev Mukhopadhyay, he wrote Anguriya Binimoy. As I just said, it is the first historical novel written in Bengal, and the hero is Shivaji. So Aurangzeb wanted to, he just wanted to confine him as a prisoner, but Shivaji came to know this and he escaped. And because of this, there was a sense of we can say courage, or he was fighting for the as a nationalist to free Hindus. So this was the idea of this whole Anguriya Binimoy. Then these novels were so powerful, they actually inspire political movements. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's Anand Math, it was about the Hindu militia, and Hindu militia was fighting against whom? Against Muslim to make a Hindu kingdom. So people got inspired by this also. Now let me show you some pictures. This is the image from film Chamin, and this is a still from the Kannada film, this Chomana Dudi. And the basic and the similar part of these pictures are that films were made on the novels. So novels were so important and so well accepted that people were making movies on that. Now the novel and the national making, as I just said that because novel were popularizing the past characters in order to make the idea or spread the idea of nationalism, and they were taking the characters of the past. But Premchand, what he did, he created the characters like everyone could relate, like aristocrats, landlords, middle level peasants, laborers, middle class professionals. Everyone was there in Premchand's novel, so everyone could relate it. So he showed that okay, whatever things has happened, we'll take that, but what is happening, what is in the present state, and what is the future. So he took the importance of past and also showed about everyone through his novel what is going on in the present. So Premchand character, they create a community based on democratic values. There was a novel Rangabhumi, the arena of Premchand, and here he showed Surdas. Surdas means a person who can't see, and he is a beggar, means he is from a lower caste, untouchable caste, and he can't see. So he is this hero of his novel, and what he showed is that how industrialization impacts the person who is on the lowest point in the ladder. So what was happening was, there was a trial, or people were trying to establish a tobacco factory, and Surdas, because he was untouchable, he was poor, he still struggled against this. So this is how this created a kind of nationalism and an idea of to fight, and it showed also what was happening to the lower caste people. And there was an epic, Godan. Godan means the gift of cow, and this is really an epic because it was written in 1936, and this is the best known work of Premchand. Here in this Godan, it is a story of Hori and wife Dhania. Now everyone was involved, like landlord, moneylenders, priests, colonial bureaucrats. They all were trying to oppress these two. But Hori and Dhania, they kept their dignity and they fought against it. So here is Premchand. This is how he looks. So now let me take you to the conclusion. The conclusion only says that there were various novels, and every section they had novels for them. So people were reading it, and every literate, middle class. If you see the work of Premchand and other novelists, they wrote for some cause. They were just not writing it for anything. People wrote about fantasy and everything, but the basic idea was to show the present situation, and there has to be some cause. So they did that, and all the cultures, communities, they when they read this novel, they had a sense of sharing. So this is how different groups have explored, or they found their identities using these novels. So before I go ahead or conclude, I would like to tell you or just recall the novels from India. So we have Banabhatta Kadambari, 7th century it was written in Sanskrit. Then Devikarandan Khatri, he wrote Chandrakanta. Rokhaya Hussain, Sultan's Dream. Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Durgesh Nandani and Anandmat. Then we have Potheri Kunjabu. I can't just, I'm so sorry for the pronunciation. So let me try again. Potheri Khonjanbu. And he wrote Saraswati Vijayam. Then Buddhadev Mukhopadhyay, he wrote Anguriya Binimoy. And Lakshman Moreshwar Halbe, Muktamala. And Premchand, the Seva Sadan Nirmala, he wrote Seva Sadan, Nirmala Rangabhumi and Godan. Godan was the epic. This is the best work in Hindi. People say that. And one more recalling we must do. This is the novel from West. So let me just take you to the details. Charles Dickens, he was the author of Oliver Twist and Hard Times, and it was about the industrialization, how urban workers faced this industrialization. Then we have Daniel Defoe. He wrote Robinson Crusoe on colonialism. People were liking colonialism. This is what the content was. R.L. Stevenson, he wrote the Treasure Island, and this was novels for young boys, praise the work done by the colonizers. Then Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. The content was, she wrote about women in rural society. Then Thomas Hardy, he wrote Mayor of Casterbridge. This is about the traditional rural communities of England. Then Henry Fielding, he wrote Tom Jones, and it was a costly book, 6 volumes and 3 shillings each. Charlotte Bronte, she wrote Jane Eyre. Jane is shown as independent, assertive and strong women. Helen Hunt Jackson, and also this Sarah Chauncey Woolsey. Helen wrote Ramona, and Sarah wrote What Kitty Did. And both the stories, the content was love stories written for the adolescent girls. Then Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. This is novel for young boys, and this praised the work done by the colonizers. So this is the kind of summary I wanted to share. So this is all about the content of this chapter discussion. So hope you got the idea how it shaped up. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.